Elden Ring is truly a landmark in the gaming world, and I personally see this reflected in how it manages to balance a deep narrative with an immersive open world in a way that few games achieve. When you enter the lands between, you feel like you are facing something grand, a land full of stories, mysteries, and a visual architecture that completely captures your attention. The feeling of getting lost, exploring its vast environments, always discovering a new horizon or a hidden cove, is something that few current productions manage to deliver with such intensity. However, this immersion comes at a price. For me, the pace of Elden Ring can be a challenge for those who are used to the rapid consumption of content that social media provides today. The game requires patience, attention to detail, and a genuine desire to learn. Everything is slower, from exploration to combat, which involves studying enemy patterns and precise timing. This approach may seem frustrating or even tiring for some players, especially those accustomed to games that deliver instant rewards or have a smoother and faster learning curve. It is precisely this learning curve that makes Elden Ring challenging and, for many, rewarding. Facing a difficult boss, making mistakes several times, retreating to explore other areas, improving your character, and returning more prepared creates an experience of overcoming that is very personal. I myself was stuck in fights that required repeated trial and error, but it was precisely this process that made me value the victories even more. Unlike games that hold the player's hand all the time, Elden Ring respects your intelligence and offers you the freedom to find your own way. But it's not just a matter of difficulty. The subtle and fragmented narrative is another element that has profoundly won me over. It is not linear or explicit, but delivered through interspersed dialogues, item descriptions, and the surrounding environment. This creates a constant mystery and invites the player to actively engage in the construction of the story, making each discovery of lore a prize that makes the whole journey worthwhile. This way of telling the story requires a time that often contrasts with the speed of today's digital world, which reinforces the feeling that the game asks for a greater commitment. Despite all these points, there is an unbeatable charm in the fact that Elden Ring lets you go at your own pace. You can question the challenge, feel difficulties, and still be free to step away and explore other areas, evolve your character without immediate pressure. This open and non-linear design opened up a sense of discovery and freedom that I don't find in many other games today. It knows how to balance being punitive without being unfair, and that made me come back several times to continue the adventure. Elden Ring for me is a game that represents what the gaming world can offer of the most profound and engaging, as long as the player is willing to embrace its slow and demanding pace. It's not for everyone, especially for those looking for quick gratification, but for those who like a challenge and a narrative that unfolds little by little, it's a unique and unforgettable experience. Its combination of vast world, technical combat, and delicately told story makes it a true classic for those who like to dive headfirst, without haste, into a fascinating universe that teaches through practice, patience, and persistence. The detailed setting of Elden Ring is something that really impresses me every time I return to the game. Every corner of the lands between is carefully constructed, with a wealth of details that makes you feel like you are exploring a living world full of hidden stories. This is not something that happens quickly or superficially. It takes time to absorb each landscape, each ruin, and each character, creating an experience that escapes the immediacy of most current games. For me, this deep immersion is a reward that only comes to those who have this willingness to dive in calmly. But what really catches my attention is how the game demands an enormous tolerance for frustration. Elden Ring is not like games that deliver instant satisfaction or make it too easy for the player. On the contrary, it wants you to make mistakes, learn, repeat, and gradually improve. This made me reflect a lot on how current culture, especially that of Generation Alpha, is obsessed with speed and immediate gratification, whether on social media or in everyday life. For these players, the patience required by the game may seem like an almost insurmountable obstacle. Despite this, I see this tolerance for frustration as one of the great merits of the game. In a world where everything is fast and disposable, Elden Ring asks you to slow down, to embrace the process, and to find pleasure in the challenge. I myself needed to adapt mentally to not fall into the temptation of giving up on the first frustrated attempts against a boss or in a difficult area. This changes your relationship with the game and even with the very concept of the game, as it becomes something that demands delivery and persistence more than a simple distraction. Patience, for me, has become a kind of playable virtue in Elden Ring, something that is learned by confronting the feeling of defeat and frustration without giving up. Each advance, each victory, generates a genuine satisfaction because it was achieved with real effort. This is very different from what I'm used to seeing in other games or in digital life itself, where immediate comfort and quick feedback are the norm. Elden Ring almost works as a mindfulness exercise for gamers, forcing presence and focus on the moment. On the other hand, I understand that this characteristic may also alienate a significant portion of players, especially the younger ones accustomed to rapid and instant consumption. It is an intense contrast when you think about the mentality of Generation Alpha, which grew up surrounded by devices that offer immediate answers to everything. The experience of delay and radical effort of Elden Ring may seem strange, even provocative for those seeking quick results and little emotional or temporal investment. What Elden Ring taught me is that patience is a fundamental element for immersion and pleasure in games with such depth. This tolerance for frustration, although difficult to face at first, turns into a richer and more meaningful experience which goes far beyond quick entertainment. It is a valuable reminder in times when everything seems to be easily dispensed with, showing that real value usually demands time, focus, and perseverance to be achieved. Slow and contemplative gaming experiences, like those that Elden Ring provides, have always had a special place for me. Amidst a scenario where entertainment is increasingly accelerated and ephemeral, these games are like a necessary pause, a chance to slow down and enjoy every detail. Playing Elden Ring made me realize that despite the constant pressure to consume everything quickly, there is still an audience that values immersion time and the feeling of gradual construction of the experience. This type of game provides me with moments of reflection that go beyond the screen, making me think about the journey, the environment, and the story in a deeper way. It is a breath in the midst of the avalanche of quick and fragmented information that usually dominates our daily lives. Elden Ring, with its calmer pace and its extensive exploration, creates spaces where silence and patience have prominence. And this is something I miss in many contemporary games. For me, this deceleration is not a limit or a difficulty, but a way to deepen the bond with the game itself. The slowness allows each victory, each discovery, and each challenge to gain more weight. In Elden Ring, it's not just about reaching the end, but about the experience along the way, which makes the game memorable, almost like a book or a cult film, where everything has meaning and purpose. Of course, in this scenario, generational differences and player profiles become evident. It is a fact that fast, instant, and more accessible entertainment dominates the market, but games like Elden Ring show that there is still room for different experiences, even if they are more challenging and require more time. I see this as a creative resistance and an invitation to rediscover the value of the journey, contemplation, and effort that culminates in lasting rewards. Another personal point is that these games remind me that haste is not always a friend of fun. Often, trying to go too fast makes us miss precious details, and Elden Ring is a master at hiding beauties and secrets for those who are willing to explore calmly. For me, playing slowly is a form of resistance to the culture of digital immediacy and a bet on the quality of the experience, not just on the amount of content consumed. I firmly believe that games with slower and more contemplative proposals continue not only to have space, but to create valuable communities and experiences within the gaming universe. Elden Ring is a clear example of this, a game that challenges the speed of the current world and invites a more conscious, patient, and detail-rich way of playing. For those who are willing to invest this time, the experience can be transformative and, in my case, goes far beyond a simple passing entertainment. The cinematographic direction of Elden Ring is something that deeply impacts me every time I play. It's not just the beauty of the scenarios or the fluidity of the animations, but the way the game sets up its scenes and moments to create an atmosphere that feels more like a movie. For me, this transcends the simple act of playing and transforms into a visual and emotional experience that speaks directly to the player, making each encounter or event have a much greater artistic weight than in many traditional games. The game uses camera angles, lighting, and carefully planned details to tell unspoken stories, awaken sensations, and involve the player intuitively. Many times, I find myself standing in front of a scenario or contemplating the silence after a difficult battle, because at that moment, everything seems to align to transmit a very real emotion. This almost directed cinematographic direction manages to capture both the grandeur and the melancholy of the world, a rare and precious balance. In addition, the emotional depth of Elden Ring is not necessarily in the speeches or explicit dialogues, but in what is suggested, in the subtext of the narrative. For me, this subtlety makes the game work as an interactive art that respects the player's intelligence, delivering emotion and meaning through exploration, setting, and the choices we make. This indirect way of telling the story makes the experience much more personal, as each player can interpret the events in their own way. I felt that when playing, it's as if I were directing my own narrative, with the game offering the raw material for me to build my own emotional path. This is something that few games achieve, and Elden Ring elevates this approach to an almost unique artistic level, where interaction does not break immersion, but strengthens it. For me, this harmony between gameplay and visual narrative is proof that games can be sophisticated artistic expression. This experience also made me realize that games can provoke intense and complex emotions, similar to those produced by cinema, literature, or music. Elden Ring provided me with moments of tension, calm, perplexity, and even sadness, all in a universe that is both beautiful and brutal. This emotional load humanizes the game, makes you connect with it deeply, as if you were living a great personal epic. In the end, I think that the cinematographic direction and the emotional depth of Elden Ring position the game as one of the most admired forms of high-level interactive art today. This combination of careful aesthetics, subtle narrative, and emotional involvement makes it a work that, for me, is not just a game, but an artistic experience that deserves recognition for its ability to touch the player on multiple levels. One of the aspects that most catches my attention in games like Elden Ring is the cultural shock they represent in the face of how Generation Alpha consumes content today. We live in an era where speed and instantaneity on social media dominate most of people's time, especially the youngest. They are accustomed to a huge amount of quick stimuli, short videos, immediate answers, which seems to directly conflict with the proposal of games that require slow appreciation and deep dedication. Personally, I see this difference as a fascinating point and also as a challenge. Elden Ring invites the player to get lost in time, to explore every corner, to face difficulties without haste, and to absorb the narrative in a fragmented, almost hermetic way. For a profile accustomed to accelerated consumption, with instant feedback and quick rewards, this experience may seem old-fashioned, difficult to understand, or even frustrating. I myself have faced moments when patience seemed to escape in the face of the expectation of quick gratification that digital culture imposes on us. This cultural shock has to do not only with the pace, but also with the depth of the experience that Elden Ring proposes. It is a game that does not deliver ready-made information or linearity. On the contrary, it challenges the player to build their own story, to fill gaps, and to seek meaning in the details. This demands time and mental effort, something that goes in the opposite direction of the culture of networks, which privileges passive and quick consumption. For me, this contradiction makes the game even more special, as it resists this dynamic by requiring an active and reflective interaction. At the same time, I realize that this disparity creates spaces for interesting debates about how games and digital media evolve and coexist. Will the future of entertainment be based only on the speed and ease of consumption, or will there always be room for works that ask more of the viewer, that value, patience, and deepening? Elden Ring is there as a reminder that both quick consumption and slow appreciation are valid, each with its audience and its purpose. Another personal point that caught my attention is how this cultural difference can serve to rescue forgotten values, such as mindfulness and the ability to have deep experiences even in an increasingly accelerated world. Elden Ring, with its pause rhythm, can be seen as a healthy counterpoint, an invitation to slow down and rediscover the value of time dedicated to interactive art. For those who allow themselves to dive in calmly, the emotional and intellectual return can be much greater than the speed of the networks can offer. I believe that this clash between the philosophy of Elden Ring and the fast consumption of Generation Alpha is a reflection of the cultural moment in which we live, where the old and the new try to coexist and transform the way we relate to the digital world. I personally see games like Elden Ring as a bridge between these times, offering something that transcends simple distraction and signaling that sometimes, to appreciate something truly valuable, it is necessary to slow down and surrender completely.